This is Jill Pack with the Seasons of Joy podcast. This is episode number 159, entitled The Emotional Eating Fix with Kimberly Severson. Are you a woman of faith who is struggling to navigate your current season of life? Do you feel like life is just happening to you instead of for you? My name is Jill Pack, and I'm a certified faith-based life coach and a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I want you to know that no matter your season or your circumstance, it is possible to create a more joyful life, and I would love to show you how. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, my friends. Welcome to this week's episode. I am looking forward to sharing a conversation that I recently had with my new friend and fellow coach colleague, Kimberly Severson. Before I do that, though, I wanted to take a minute and just talk a little bit more about my conversation project. If you don't know already, I'm currently working on having conversations with midlife women of faith. These conversations focus on the unique experiences, challenges, and insights in this season of life, including how you navigate conflict. If you're interested in participating or learning more about this, there is a link in the show notes, or you can just email me, jill@seasons-coaching.com, with the subject line Conversation Project. So, this week I am sharing a conversation that I recently had with Coach Kimberly Severson, who is a certified weight loss and mindset coach. Kimberly recently had me as a guest on her podcast, Weight Loss Doesn't Have to Suck, where we talked about emotional eating. It was such a great conversation, and I knew that I wanted to share it with you, my listeners, as well. Kimberly helps her clients finally end the cycle of chronic dieting and to lose weight with self-trust, not restriction or deprivation, so that they can fully enjoy their lives with food and feel amazing. You can learn more about Kimberly at her website, www.kimberlyseversoncoaching.com, and I will also include the link in the show notes. So here is my conversation with Kimberly Severson.
Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Weight Loss Doesn't Have to Suck. I am your host, Kimberly Severson, and I am especially excited about today's episode. Something so many of my clients struggle with is emotional eating, and I certainly did too before I learned about the thought work tools that I teach you here on this podcast, or the emotional management and emotional resilience tools that we are always talking about here because they're so important. And so I think this is an important conversation to continue having. Essentially, how do we not end the day face down in a carton of ice cream because life just feels so hard? And I think one of the main ways we do that is getting comfortable with our emotions, especially the ones that feel hard to manage or uncomfortable in our bodies, so that we don't need to eat to escape them. And to talk about that today, I have an amazing guest. I have a fellow coach and colleague, Jill Pack. Jill is a certified life and relationship coach for women of faith as they navigate the mid-season of life, which I am in, and it's a lot. Definitely need a lot of coaching around this time of life, particularly. But Jill and I are in a coaching group together where we do a bunch of different types of events. And we were having a conversation. Jill was telling a story, and it really resonated with me. And she mentioned this concept that, emotions add richness to our lives, and we need them, and we're important. And I was like, you know what? I have to have Jill on today to talk about all of this. So thank you, Jill, for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, it's so nice to have you.
Yeah.
So how did you come to this work, particularly your comfort with emotions, right? And this emotional resilience work that we talk about. How did you find your way here?
Yeah, so I found my way here because I am a middle-aged woman that never learned about emotions.
Yeah.
And I was at a season in my life where my kids were leaving home, and I found myself in frustration most of the time. I mean, there's an exercise I do with people about your top 3 emotions that you kind of live life from.
Yeah.
And one of my top was frustration. And it's not that we want to feel happy all the time.
Right.
I think that's a message I had. And I think that's why I was frustrated. And so I found myself just in this loop of frustration until I found coaching. Like that was the season of life that I found it. And just, opened my eyes to this idea where actually, what if joy doesn't mean happy all the time? And we have more control over the things we feel than we think. And it does require feeling them.
Which we
And
don't want to do.
We don't want to do. And I think I was afraid. And I thought back to like, even as I parented my children, if they fell down and started to cry, I would say, "Oh, rub it," and you do tricks to try to get them to not cry.
Yeah, you're not feeling anything. You're not feeling anything.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. Like
Right.
it felt so uncomfortable for us
Mm-hmm.
to see them sad or uncomfortable, right? And so we would try to prevent that. And I just was doing what I learned growing up as well, and what my parents learned. They were great parents, but we just didn't really learn this skill of processing an emotion.
Right.
And then as I kind of understood what I was doing and kind of stuck in this loop of frustration, it helped me see that contrast helped me see the beauty of all of them.
Mm.
So allowing myself to feel frustrated and not being mad about it and trying to run away from it helped me move through hard things.
Yeah.
And on the other side, like there's just so much beauty there.
Yeah.
But feeling and processing an emotion doesn't mean I live there. And that's what I was doing. I was living there.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really resonates. And I think that this is so important for my listeners. And this was so important in my journey too. Because I think I mentioned this when we first had our first conversation. I was thumbing through a book. Like I had just found coaching and was thumbing through a book about food and feelings and how they related. And there was like a little survey that was like, do you understand the purpose of anger? Do you understand the purpose of sadness? Do you understand the purpose of like frustration? I was like, I had no idea at the time. I had never really thought about emotions and why they existed in the first place and whether or not there could be value in them. It had never crossed my mind.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think when we don't understand why those emotions exist in our worlds, and coupled with the fact that we're so uncomfortable with them, we don't know how to feel them. We just know that they feel really physically uncomfortable in our bodies. Of course, we're then escaping that with food.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And I think that's where a lot of the emotional eating comes in, or that comes out as like compulsive shopping or scrolling through Instagram all night long because we just don't want to feel these things because we don't know what the purpose is and we don't know how to feel them.
Well, dopamine feels way better.
Yeah.
Like, let's be real, right? That dopamine hit from that piece of chocolate or checking out in the Amazon cart, that all feels good, where frustration and sadness. And I think the thing that once I could understand that they're meant to move us through life, then they became information.
Yeah. Can you say more about that? Like, what is the point of these emotions?
Yeah. I think that once I learned frustration could be a teacher, right? And help me move through a difficult time, that opens so much more, because what frustration taught me was I had expectations of others that I was holding them to. And that when it didn't look the way I wanted, I felt frustrated. Like that. And so it allowed me to see, well, what are those expectations and are they realistic? And am I trying to control something I have no control over? Which 100% yes, I was trying to control adult children. Never works. If somebody can make that work, let me know. But it taught me about myself. What were my values? Well, the frustration also taught me that I love my family and that they're important to me. So it doesn't always tell us what we're doing wrong. It also tells us what is beautiful. Like the frustration represents something beautiful that I feel, but it's also teaching me that I'm trying to control something that is outside of my control.
Yeah.
And as long as I keep trying that, no matter what it looks like, it's never going to work out the way I hope. I'm always going to come back to frustration.
Mm-hmm.
And so the frustration was an invitation to do something different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It was a gift.
Right.
I look at it as a gift now. Now, doesn't mean I love feeling frustrated and that I want to live there, but it really was a gift to open my eyes to something far better.
Yeah. And we don't get those gifts if we're just covering up the emotion with food or distracting ourselves from the emotion with food. We miss the whole lesson. Like your entire story resonates with me so much. Different season of life with children, but that frustration, like I lived in it for years too before I found coaching, where my son was really challenging for a couple of years. It was just nonstop screaming, and not in like the normal toddler way, like literally sun up to sundown. And I was feeling so much frustration at the time. And also, I had left my job to stay home with my kids. That seemed like the right choice at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Through the frustration, when I was willing to just stop eating over it and instead look at it and be like, why is this here? What's causing this? What is this showing me?
Yeah.
Then I was able to actually get the information from it. Like, I need some breaks here. This is a lot. What's going on with this?
Yeah. Like, what can you put in place to help support you?
Gosh.
Like, if this is telling you, the frustration's telling you, maybe you're trying to do too much. Yeah. So they really are so beautiful and can teach us stuff in a deeper way that someone just talking at us can't.
Yeah.
It's really an inner work, right? It's on such a deeper level.
Yeah. And I think it's an opportunity. And, I got to that place of like, let's look at this frustration. Let's look at what's going on here. Because all I knew is I just felt miserable all the time. And that's why I sought out therapy and eventually coaching.
Yes.
But until then, I was just eating chips at night after everybody had gone to bed to not feel the frustration for a little bit of time. But obviously, not only was that having unwanted consequences in me being 40 pounds heavier than I am now, but also I wasn't addressing what the frustration was trying to communicate to me. And in being like, hey, let's look at this. One, let's even name it. What are you feeling right now? Because I was just like angry. Right?
Yeah.
And to be like, oh, this is frustration. Okay, why? Okay, what do you think it's telling you? It moves you forward in a way that you would miss otherwise.
Yeah. And I think that you hit on a really important thing is one of the first steps in this emotional work is to become more articulate, or what's the word? Literate. In emotional language, right? Because most of us, I would say, live in 5 emotional words, right? We don't have the language to describe how we're feeling. And we tend to use the same words for all these emotions. But when we can expand our vocabulary, it gives us so much power. Like Brene Brown says, name it to tame it, right? And so is it anxiety you're feeling, or is it embarrassment?
Right.
Is it stress, or is it frustration? Right? Like the more specific we can get, and now that doesn't always work when we're in the thick of an elevated emotion, but for the most part, when we aren't in that the elevated emotion, and we spend the time looking at the vocabulary, the words themselves, we have information to pull from. Right? It gives us the ability to name it in a more accurate way, which then gives us more accurate information.
I totally get that. I was feeling like this happened to me today. Just things were going wrong, like unexpected things, and everything was taking longer than I thought. And I'm kind of like watching the day slip away from me. And I think I would have just called that like stress. before.
Yes. Yes.
But because I've done exactly what you're describing, that work of like, let's get into the nuance of what exactly is going on for you emotionally, because that's going to give you very like targeted information that you can then work
Mm-hmm.
with. So I was like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what this is? It's time scarcity, which isn't, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if that's an emotion. But it was like,
Uh-huh. But it
yeah,
is fear, right? It's
right.
a fear of not having enough
Mm-hmm.
time, right?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I was able to name that for myself, I was able to be like, hey, here are the things that are most important. Do you actually have time for them? Yes, we'll get that done. Maybe you're going to have to
Mhm.
take a couple of less important things off your plate. But
Mhm.
or if I had just been like, I'm just stressed and, I'm not even going to look at
Yeah.
it, just going to eat to escape it. You're
Yeah.
not doing that inner work that's actually addressing what's really going on for you.
Yeah. And then how can we really support ourselves in those moments in a real, authentic, loving way,
Mm-hmm.
right? I was working with a client today and we were even talking about, she was talking about some stress, right? And it's like, we've spent a little time. Okay, if you were to give us a scale of 1 to 10, how much stress did you feel at the beginning of this call? And then in this point in the call? And it had gone down. And I said, the key is to ask yourself in those moments and whatever the emotion is, how can I support myself here? Instead of, I'm so stressed, I shouldn't be, or I slip into it and I just wallow in it, right? It can look all different ways. But when we take the time to go, okay, what's it telling me? And how can and sometimes it's more, how can I support myself in this moment? And then we get curious, what's it telling me, right? Because in the thick of it, we're not thinking clearly, but it really comes back around. If I know the language, I'm better able to support myself in that moment so that on the other side of it, I can access my higher brain and problem solve and go, okay, you know what? I probably overscheduled myself because I'm afraid that I don't have enough time and I'm squishing it all in there. What could I let go of? Or what does it look like to structure my day a little differently or whatever? Like we have more access to creativity than we do if we don't allow ourselves the ability to feel those things and learn from them.
Yeah. It really is huge. And I think when a lot of us, we first hear about this work, it sounds kind of fluffy. Like,
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
or like,
Yeah.
I don't know, life coachy, which we're coaches, so
Yeah.
appropriate. But
Yeah.
like that has been one of the most life-changing questions to ask myself. And I say this on the podcast. I think I'm saying what you say in a different way of like, what
Mhm.
do I need right now?
Yeah.
Can I support
Yeah.
myself in this moment rather than just
Mhm.
going and not even acknowledging it, which I don't know about you, that always ends up with like a terrible outcome,
Right.
explosion or a spiral or something. But instead, if we can learn to catch ourselves in the beginning of these more uncomfortable
Mhm.
emotions and like, what's going on
Mhm.
for me? What do I need right now? How can I support
Mhm.
myself in that moment? We prevent those eventual
Yeah.
explosions or spirals.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me when I was in this phase of figuring out what frustration was telling me, right? I had to know what it felt like. I
Hmm.
had to pay attention. And so it got to the point where, and I've had a similar experience with anxiety, where I know how it feels in my body. And so it's easy to name it,
Yes.
right? Because it's like, oh, it's in my chest. It's heavy. It's whatever way we describe it for ourselves. That's telling me, here it is. Here it is. I don't have to be afraid of it. I don't have to be scared of it. I know exactly what it is and I know what to do with it.
Yeah.
But it starts with paying attention so that when it comes, it doesn't throw us for a loop.
Hmm.
I remember when I first learned this and I was experiencing some anxiety and I was with my husband in the car and I could just feel it in my chest, right? And we were going to a family thing and I just said to him, I'm like, I'm feeling so anxious right now. And he said, why? What's wrong? He wanted to fix it, which bless his heart. I love him for that.
Mhm.
But I was just like, I just need to feel this right now. And I remember going through that experience and it letting it play out and run its course. and the idea of an emotion can last 90 seconds, right? There's a lifespan of an emotion if we let it move through us, right? So this was my opportunity to really give it a good old college try.
Right.
So I allowed for it, reminding myself the whole time that this is something I'm thinking of creating that's in me, and it's okay, and allowed that to happen. And in 90 seconds, it wasn't gone. I will say it wasn't gone, but it was softened quite a bit that I could go, okay, you know what? I can go into this family thing and be the person I want to be because I let that be. And I know why I felt that way. I can recognize the thinking that was happening leading up to that. Some true, some not true. Like, right. I had choice in that moment after I had allowed that emotion to move through me. But I think that the first key is to just get familiar with how our body feels things and use that as the launch pad to something different.
Yeah. I remember doing that exact same work with my frustration. Before I had this habit of studying myself or observing myself, witnessing what was going on for me, I wouldn't notice the frustration until I was at an 11 and I was exploding or like melting into a puddle of tears or whatever it was.
Yes.
And that was really powerful, game-changing work to be able to be like, what are the first whispers of this frustration? So we can catch it earlier in the process and start to get curious about it. Do I just need a break? Do I need to remind myself of something that I've forgotten, right? Maybe I'm thinking in a way that's causing this frustration and it's unnecessary. You know, it could be any number of things that you might need in that moment. But when it's at like a 1 or a 2 versus 11, okay, we haven't lost the executive functioning fully. We can actually work with what we've got.
Yeah. Well, and I think that begins with, reminding ourselves that it isn't anything to be afraid of. And we're not wrong or bad that we feel frustration when our kid does something, right? Like it makes total sense that we feel frustration in this moment. So I think when we can remove the belief that it's wrong, it's a lot easier to catch it at a 1 or a 2.
I think so too. Yeah.
Because if we're believing it's not okay, we're going to push it away as long as we can. We're going to eat it away.
Yeah, that's where I started of like, when I am feeling happiness and joy and contentment, I'm doing it right. Things are going as they should. But when I'm feeling frustration and anger or sadness or lonely, like that something has gone terribly wrong and that shouldn't be there. And that's when, we're either pushing it away or we're eating to distract or whatever we're doing.
Yeah.
But I think what you're describing is like, oh no, all emotions get to exist. We're a human being. We're going to have the full range of human emotions.
Yeah.
Instead of being afraid of it, we can get curious about it.
Yeah.
And that is tremendously helpful in all the ways.
So I would say that is probably the number one thing that has changed things for me is the emotional piece. My mindset is powerful, 100%. But the emotion, I feel like, is the gateway to access the mindset part.
I think so too. 100%. Yeah. And you can't have one without the other. And I do think that question of like, what do I need in this moment can really help you get to like, what is the right tool for
this moment?
Yeah. But it's hard work. It's hard work to go inside and feel these emotions that we've been pushing away or denying for our entire lives. It can feel so uncomfortable. But I think, and you tell me if this was your experience, once we develop the willingness to be like, okay, I can go in and feel anxiety. Or, all right, let me be here with myself amid this frustration and feel it in my body.
Yeah.
Actually, that starts to feel less painful and challenging.
100%. There's a coach, her name's Leah Davidson, and she talks about your nervous system and everything, because the zone of resilience, right? And I think the zone of resilience, there's flexibility in there, right? We either go into fight or flight or, resistance or defense, whatever it looks like in those extremes when we don't want to feel, right? Hyper. Yeah. But when we're in our the zone of resilience, it doesn't mean we're going to feel great all the time, but it doesn't derail us.
Right. Yes.
It doesn't feel like the end of the world. Like you said, it's like the frustration comes, but it's like, okay,
Yeah.
here it is. I can do it. This is frustration today.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be this big ordeal. It's just moving us through that particular moment in time.
Yeah.
And then we get to the next moment of time.
Right. Yeah.
Something different.
Right. So it's opening up to, okay, this might feel a little uncomfortable. I haven't really allowed myself to feel this in a long time, but here I am. I'm doing it. The willingness to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think also, and I remember I had a coach for a while, Jamie Berman, who I just adore. And I feel like on some level I knew this, but she said it in such a way that just landed with me at the time. And I repeat this to myself all the time now. She's like, no emotion lasts forever. You will not always feel this way.
Yeah.
So that was huge for me to be like, all emotions are transitory.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we're feeling them, like we think we're going to get stuck in them and feel this way forever. In fact, you shared a story when we met on that call about your daughter. Would you share it?
Yes. Oh, I would love to. So my daughter, she's 24 now. So she's not 4. But this was about 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And she was in preschool and I would go and pick her up, drop her off. And she usually would skip both ways. Like she loved preschool. She loved people. She was friendly. She just full of life. But she also, since it's been diagnosed with ADD, but the holding still was a challenge for her. And this particular day, I went to pick her up and she came out and she just walked across, like down the stairs, across the lawn. And she just you could tell she was so sad. And she got in the car and I asked her how her day was. And she just told me how she'd gotten in trouble and it wasn't very good. She had to sit in the hall. And my heart just ached for her, and at this time, she's my 5th. So I kind of had known, like, roll with things a little bit better. Not always, but in this moment, I did. I knew that her nature isn't to be naughty. It was something that felt bigger than her. And she had suffered the consequence of sitting in the hall. So I wasn't going to lecture her or whatever. And so she got in the car and was trying to think, how can I help her feel better, if you will. And so we drive home and I said, would you want to make some cookies today? And she said, yeah. We get home and I set her on the stool and I start pulling the ingredients out and she's just kind of sitting there. And after a little bit of time, I look around and I can see her looking up and kind of her mind kind of going. And pretty soon she's gone. Like she's not on the stool, but I can hear her in her room playing and she's talking to herself. And pretty soon she comes in and she has this big armful of toys and she puts them on the stool and she's playing for a few minutes. And she's just talking and pretending. And she looks up at me, stops in her tracks and she says, I'm happy. It has stuck with me ever since because I realized that she believed with her 4-year-old mind, which that's where she was, right? 4, she's learning this stuff. She really thought that she was going to be sad forever. Like she really thought that. And when the sadness faded and the happiness kind of was seeping back in, she saw the contrast. She saw the difference. She learned that her emotion didn't last forever and that she would be happy again. And like I said, I've thought about this story so much since then because and especially as I've learned more about emotions, right? We're all like this.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm 22 years old and I still am like, this is going to last forever.
Yeah. We think it's going to be forever. Happiness won't come. And for lots of different reasons, right? And we start looking outside of ourselves to determine our happiness. But I just think it's just it's a beautiful gift because it helped me see what joy is. And this is what I teach my clients is the joy is that moment after where she had happiness and sadness to compare.
Yeah.
Like that richness is joy.
Yeah.
And I just think there's something so beautiful about that and healing in a way that like none of this, the hardship that we have in life is here to punish us or tell us that we're doing things terribly wrong. It's a gift to show us the beauty of what's possible.
It's kind of cold comfort in the moment to be like, well, you won't even notice the happiness if you don't have the
Yeah.
sadness. Like you need
Right.
stress.
You need
You're like,
both.
well, that doesn't make me feel any better. But it really
Yeah.
is true, right? Because
Yeah.
we have those low moments. The other side of that coin is we have these high
Yeah.
moments and everything in between. And like you said, that is a rich, beautiful human life.
Yeah.
And if we're just happy all the time, like we're not going to notice we're happy.
Yeah. And it made me think of like a painting, right? Like if there's no depth, if there's no shadow and light, like that contrast, a picture is more beautiful when it has both.
Yeah. Yes. So all of these things that we've talked about, like, okay, this emotion, it's here for a reason. It has a purpose. It's got some information for me. That's
Mhm.
so valuable. Also, like I can feel it. I've thought maybe subconsciously for my entire life that I can't, but when I go in and experience it, I can tolerate it. And it
Mhm.
will pass, as we said. And it's
Yeah.
part of life, right? We need the
Yeah.
contrast, we need the light and the shadow. When I learned all of these things, it was like, oh, okay. Now I'm familiar with my emotions and I'm both resilient and tolerant in a way that I wasn't. I think these are
Mhm.
such important lessons that nobody's really
Yeah.
talking about.
No, nobody did. When I grew up, if you were sad, it was all about moving past it,
Yeah,
getting over it,
right.
right? It was about doing oh, I'm better now, right? It's just trying to move away from those uncomfortable emotions. And I think what's also helpful in this discussion is if the case, if it's true that we need to experience these emotions and discomfort is okay, the next step is being okay with other people's discomfort, right? Like if they're going to be sad, they're going to be frustrated, they're going to experience emotions that move them through this life experience. And we have to allow for the discomfort that comes
Mhm.
with navigating other people's emotions
Yeah, and
too.
that's something I forget all the time. I sometimes have an easier time doing it with my children. I'm like,
Yeah.
because I want to teach them this stuff. They're
Yeah.
still,
Yes.
but then my husband will be frustrated after a long day, and I'm like, what's wrong with him?
Yeah. Why is he can he step out of that? It's
Right,
so true.
exactly.
We want them to feel better because we will
I
feel
don't want.
better,
Yep.
right? But I just think this emotional work is such a beautiful gateway to something beautiful in life. Like it really is. Our relationships are deeper,
Hmm.
and whatever relationship that is, with ourselves or other people, or if you believe in God, like all those relationships are woven with richness
Yeah.
when that emotional piece is added. I mean, you just think of like a robot has no emotions.
Right.
That sounds horrible.
Mhm.
I think sometimes I remember a coach once saying, as they worked with clients, they would often say, I just want to feel neutral about this.
Right. Yeah.
And she would say, really? You just want to feel, you wake up in the morning and go, sure hope I feel neutral today.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
no, we don't want that. And the ability to feel happiness comes from the sadness that we feel.
Yeah.
It
Right.
just does.
And it's just chilled me out about all of it,
Yeah.
learning these tools.
Yeah.
Be like,
Yeah.
and this is something that you had mentioned when we talked last, too. Instead of being like, oh my gosh, I'm sad. This is a problem. What's going on?
Mhm.
How do I get out of this as quickly as possible? You started
Yeah.
to just say, that's interesting.
Yeah. It's my favorite phrase.
Yeah, me too.
And if you ask anyone that knows me, they're like, I hear you say that all the time. But it's just like it created space to choose what I want to feel.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe it is anger and maybe it is frustration. Like, but it's giving me a choice to decide on purpose, who do I want to be in this moment? And I have to get curious in order to make that choice.
I love it. Can you tell us, you had mentioned an emotional processing tool that you use with your clients?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I call it processing emotions now. So NOW is an acronym. And I kind of touched on this early when I told my story about anxiety, but so listeners can kind of reference that a little bit as I talk about this. But notice a name is N. And I think sometimes naming it's hard. And I say, give yourself grace, practice the words. You'll find the words. But in the very beginning, noticing is enough. Just noticing that you're feeling an elevated emotion is enough in that moment if you don't have the words. So we don't have to overthink the name, but I think the more familiar we become, the better that will serve us in the long run. So noticing, naming it, and that noticing is how that particular emotion feels in your body. And then you open up to it and you observe, right? You open up to, you drop in your body, you pay attention to the sensations that are occurring and just letting them be without reacting from them. Sometimes people think processing means reacting. Processing means you just know it's there and you let it be. You don't do anything with it. That's processing, right? And so opening up and observing what's happening for you while you watch and wait. Watching means you observe yourself, you watch yourself have this experience while you remind yourself, this is happening because of something I'm believing right now. This is just this emotion, the heaviness in my chest, and it's happening because of something I believe in this moment. And that's okay. And that's the process I used in that 90 seconds that I talked about. And that, like, I just still can remember how I felt after that, like the relief that came from the softening, knowing that I could get out of the car and do what I was meant to do. And so just allowing myself the space to do that sped the process up. Because then I went in, I did what I was supposed to do, and it dissipated in not very long. And I chose on purpose, I could go in there intentionally being the person I wanted to be
Right.
because I had allowed that emotion to move through me. Where so often, if we hide it or stuff it or eat it, we go into that kind of a situation and we snap at people or we withdraw or we're in our heads. Like we show up in a way that isn't who we want to be, but it's because we're trying to resist where we are in that moment. And so allowing the process gives us agency in a way that resisting and all of that doesn't.
It's so good. And I think that's so important. If you're listening to this right now and you're struggling with emotional eating, I think it's important to remind yourself of like, okay, the food does taste good in the moment. Like you said, the dopamine hit is fun in the moment. It takes us away from that emotional experience that's uncomfortable, but it's so
Mhm.
temporary. And
Yeah.
we're compounding the problem, not solving it, because then our clothes don't fit and we feel uncomfortable for the rest of the night.
Mhm.
But doing the process that you've described in so many of the things we've talked about today, it's actually moving you through the emotion, or it's teaching you something, or it's just increasing your comfort with or tolerance of the uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's normalizing it.
Yeah. And I think we're building a capacity in us for more positive, if you will, emotion. We're creating more space for them. When we constrict our emotions, we're restricting all of them.
Yeah.
If
I
we're restricting negative, we are withholding the good. We aren't feeling the good as we could, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And so I think that by allowing ourselves to feel, and again, emotions aren't good or bad, but when we allow ourselves to feel those ones that don't feel good and let them move through us, we've created space for the ones that feel good, the ones we want to live from.
Yeah, I think that's completely on point. Like, I was ignoring all of my emotions before I came to this work. And yeah, it felt better to feel happy or joyful or whatever. But I'm so
Mhm.
much more tuned in to all of my
Mhm.
emotions now because I got
Mhm.
curious about the uncomfortable ones. Now I'm getting curious
Yeah.
about the ones that feel like great in my body.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're just so much more tuned in and so much more aware.
Yeah. It's like you can relish them
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
a way that I couldn't before. right? Because the frustration I wasn't processing was clouding my ability. It was holding me back from really expanding my emotional capacity.
Yeah. What's that quote? What you resist persists.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
It's so true. It's so true. And then the resistance is where we live.
Yeah. All the time.
And it's a miserable place to be.
Yeah.
Because I've been there a lot.
All of us have. I mean, anyone that struggles with emotional eating, we are spending a lot of time in the negative emotion that we're resisting and we're running from it, but we're not really addressing it. So it persists. But I think all of the tools you've shared today have been so helpful. I know that my listeners will find them so valuable. I could talk to you about feelings all day long.
Well, we've done it twice now, right?
We'll just keep this going. But I wanna wrap it up here so that people can really chew on what we have talked about today, because that's the process. Everything we've described today is how you get kind of cozy with these uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I can't thank you enough for sharing.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's been such a pleasure to have this conversation with you. And I just love talking to other coaches because we can geek out together on all this stuff.
No one else talks about feelings with such joy, but here we are. Jill, what a joy talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in to the Seasons of Joy podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends and family. If you want to learn more about me or how to work with me, just visit my website, www.seasons-coaching.com, and have a joyful week.